I'd like to welcome you all to the Sustainability Advisory Board on Monday, April 1st. I call this meeting to order and see that we do have quorum tonight. See no one for public comment, we'll move right ahead to approval of the minutes. Did you all have a chance to read them? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, no discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's move on to our presentation of the evening. Kevin Crawford from the university is going to share with us all about PAHs or something. We'll find out soon.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm Kevin Crawford. I'm a professor in the chemistry department at UW Oshkosh, and I'm also currently the director of our Sustainability Institute for Regional Transformations. So my area of research is environmental analytical chemistry, and so basically I measure things in the environment that shouldn't be there. I've been doing this for a while, and turn that up. So one area that I've done some work on over the years is on a group of compounds called PAHs, and these are made up of carbon and hydrogen, and they are in ring structures, as you see on the left there. In chemistry representations, we draw these structures as a shorthand way for the formulas. But each corner there is a carbon, and it may have one hydrogen attached to it. Some of them don't because they're in the interior of the structure. This kind of structure tends to be flat, and what that means is that it can get into and interact with DNA, and it can do some other things. So we'll talk about that a little bit. They come from lots of things. The interesting thing about PAHs is you can get them from burning almost anything, anything made of carbon. And so oil and coal contain them, but if you char a steak on the grill, you tend to get some PAHs in there. So we're exposed to these. They're in our diets, they're in the air, they're in our environment. We do see them coming from the air, so from fires and other sources. They deposit, and you can actually find them on fresh fruits and vegetables as well. So I'll talk a little bit about the properties. So these are 16 of the compounds that are considered to be important by the EPA. There's a interesting history of why it's these 16, and it doesn't actually have to do with how toxic they are. It had to do partly with what we could measure at the time that they started looking for things in the environment, and these were some of the things they kept finding and were easy enough to measure. And so these 16 are considered priority PAHs. They're the ones that a lot of studies are based on. Instead of just the hundreds and hundreds of different PAHs, we focus on this group. And the ones I've highlighted in red are the higher molecular weight ones that we use when we try to figure out where they're coming from. And so when you look at these in the environment, the different amounts and ratios of the different compounds tells you something about where they're from, so we can do some source analysis. The two that are in the box there are the two that are known or suspected human carcinogens out of the 16. A couple of the others probably are too, but we don't have any real solid evidence on that yet. Benzoate is the only known human carcinogen out of those 16. So when we pull these out, we're extracting them from whatever they're in, and we're looking at how much is there. I just wanted to sort of baseline a little bit here about how toxic these are relative to other things. And so OSHA sets air quality limits for workers, and for, they call this coal tar pitch volatiles. That goes back to where they were being produced in coal refining systems. And they had an 8-hour time-weighted exposure of 0.2 milligrams per cubic meter of air. If you look at 2,4-D, a common herbicide, its limit is as high as 10, and pyrethrum, an organic insecticide, is 5. So you can see these are fairly toxic relative to those two other kinds of chemicals. For water quality, municipal drinking water, benzoate has a limit of 0.2 micrograms per liter, while 2,4-D, the same example I used on the previous slide, is 70, and atrazine is 3, and then lead is 15. So those are all the same unit there, micrograms per liter. And so you can see again, these are fairly toxic compounds that we want to avoid a lot of exposure to. And that's the benzoate-pyrene, the one I said is the known human carcinogen. I would just point out, though, that these limits here are not solely based on toxicity. It's also about what we can measure and what we can remove. So the lead limit of 15, we actually would like to see that at 0, but you can't really measure 0, and we can't effectively remove it once you get down below a certain level. So 15 is where it's set, mostly based on what we can measure. So this one is going to be really hard to read, so squint. But I just want to highlight, this is another place where we look. So the first of these 3 slides was air. There's a limit set for coal tar pitch volatiles. For water, there's a limit set for benzoate-pyrene. And for sediment, there are limits for a lot of these compounds. And these aren't regulatory limits on this slide. What these are the levels where we think bad things are going to happen. So PEC on the far right is the probable effects concentration, meaning if the level is that high or higher, it probably will affect something that is exposed to it. So that could be fish, that could be snails, that could be any other things that might be exposed to that in the environment. So this list comes from basically a whole bunch of studies over the years that have been put together and brought in to make this list. The TEC is the threshold effects concentration. That's on the far left, and that's what we consider that if you're below that, really there isn't anything that we've seen detrimental to any wildlife. Midpoint effects concentration, MEC, in the middle. So these are what the DNR uses when they look at sediment in rivers and streams and lakes to see whether it's been impacted by these pollutants. They'll look at these numbers. And so benzoate-pyrene is about halfway down there, and 150 micrograms per kilogram is the threshold effects concentration, and then 1450 is the probable effects concentration. These are micrograms per kilogram of the sediment after it's been dried, so we remove the water, and it's normalized to 1% total organic carbon. So if you think about sediments, they can be really sandy, they can be really mucky and muddy, and PAHs as a group of molecules tend to stick to carbon like mud. And so if we had a really muddy sample, we would naturally see higher levels anyway, just because they stick to it really well. So we normalize everything to 1% when we're comparing numbers. So the study that I was involved with most recently, we partnered with Clean Wisconsin and the university, and we looked at PAH contamination in rivers in 3 different Wisconsin cities. The U.S. Geological Survey had already been involved in a study in Milwaukee, and so we didn't go there. That work was being done and was nearly finished when we started this work. We instead focused on Eau Claire, Stevens Point, and Racine, and the attraction of those 3 was they each have a river running through the city that starts in a more rural area. And so we were able to look at land use and see that certain sections of the river were definitely agricultural and rural, and then other sections were more urbanized. So the map there, you can see A is the Eau Claire region, that's the EC designation on those samples. B is Stevens Point, so it's the Plover River, and then C is the Root River in Racine. So what we found, and there's a lot on this slide as well, but I'll walk through some of it pretty slowly. The top of this slide has the Eau Claire average. So we didn't break out the samples for Eau Claire because if you look at the numbers, it's only the total amount of the 16 PAHs altogether was an average of 100 micrograms per kilogram. And remember that benzoate-pyrene alone, we looked at 150 as the threshold. So all 16 together didn't even make it up to 100. The plus or minus 116 there was some variation in our numbers, but that's still not a real wide range. And then if you look at and that's the urban Eau Claire average. If you look on the right side, that's the rural samples averaged 21. So very little pH contamination in that river at all. There was one that was a bit of an outlier, but we looked back in the history, and that had some interesting industrial activity in the past that probably contributed to that. So then the next set of samples are the Stevens Point samples, and that's the Plover River moving down. And so the ones that don't say PR, those are ponds that were in the area as well. So we did sample some ponds that we could get access to. And so if you look on the right side for Stevens Point, the total pH is average in the rural samples was 109, and in the urban samples it was 234. But below that is the number after we normalized it to 1% organic carbon. So the first set of averages are the ones that it's just the numbers we got without normalizing it to carbon. The second set we normalized it. And you see that raised the urban samples quite a bit because they were actually fairly low carbon. And so you were dividing by something less than 1, which raised our average. But the rural samples were higher percent carbon, and so that number dropped. And so the difference got much larger. And so there we get to a point where statistically there's a significant difference between the urban samples and the rural samples. So we see there's definitely a change as you move into the urban area. The Root River, much more exciting as far as the numbers. Definitely a more industrial activity over a longer period of time, more development. And so you see for those samples, we have a much higher average even before we normalize. There, though, the urban samples had fairly high organic carbon, some of them. And so when we normalized that, it actually dropped the urban average down to 1,800, but 1,800 compared to 600 for Stevens Point and 100 for Eau Claire. And then the rural sample there, though, was also still low, 180. So you can see we definitely don't see much PAH contamination in the rural areas, and we see fairly significant as we get into those urban areas. So then what to do with this? So one of our goals was to try to figure out where the PAHs were coming from. And that's been done a lot of different times in the literature, and so we had some good models to work from. And so we used the same techniques that the USGS was using in Milwaukee. And our goal here was to look at the data as many different ways as possible. And if all of those different ways come up with the same answer, then it's probably the best answer. So that was our strategy here. So that's what these next few slides are going to show you. So this is one way of looking at the data. We took on the y-axis the amount of indenopyrene, one of the PAHs, divided by the sum of the indenopyrene plus the benzo-GHI pyrene. So that's a ratio on the left, and on the x-axis is the fluorine over the fluorine plus pyrene amounts. So another ratio. So a double ratio plot. We looked at this and we plotted our samples. And so in bold are our samples, Root River, Plover River, Eau Claire. You can see some of those popping out. So they're all falling pretty much into the combustion area of this graph. And we know this again from other studies where combustion byproduct pH profiles show up. So they're coming from burning things. That's pretty clear from this graph. You see vehicle combustion has its own area there, and then oil spills, petroleum products would be the lower end. But the thing that shows up in here, these CTs, those are coal tar. So all those CT samples that are not quite as dark a bold, those are coal tar samples from other sites, from other studies. So you see we're bunching in where those coal tar samples are. There's a number of other ones on there, WD for wood, LUBR over on the right is a lubricating oil, Coke you see in the middle sort of. So these are all different abbreviations for different kinds of samples. Notice tire is down in the lower left, so that's rubber breaking off of tires. That's the kind of pH signature it would give you on this kind of graph. So then we also looked at a chi-square value. So this is a statistical test telling us how similar our samples are compared to other things. And so the more similar they are, the lower they are on this y-axis. And so we ordered these from left to right, from most similar to least similar. And you can see the first whole bunch there are all CT, coal tar samples. And the darkening in of those are from pavement seal lot dust and runoff. So again, we're going back into other people's research on these samples and comparing it to ours, and we're seeing similarities there. So what they identified as coming from coal tar pavement sealers, we were seeing as a very close match to ours. Not to say that it's a perfect match. These are just the most likely matches. And again, the further you get away, the less match it is. Again, tire, you see about, I don't know, 80% of the way across the bottom, you see tire. So not as great of a match for that. And then this one is another statistical test, Euclidean distance. And here again, lower on this graph is more similar. And we ordered them then from the most similar to the least similar. And you see again, our coal tars are showing up right in the front end there as being the most similar. And again, tire shows up way on the other end. So this is not per site. We didn't dive into this as at this site this is what we're seeing. We're looking at the overall data, the summative amount of our data for our different sites. So just a little bit at the end here about where this stuff can come from, and I mentioned coal tar several times there. So if these numbers, I wouldn't say are like, they're not, that's the number. These are sort of a midpoint number when you look in the literature. At fresh asphalt, about 1.5 milligrams per kilogram of PAHs. Fresh motor oil, about 7. Road dust, about 24. Gasoline emissions, about 370. And then asphalt-based pavement sealers are 50, and coal tar-based pavement sealers are 70,000. You'll see numbers in literature there from like 30,000 to 150,000. So we definitely see one contributor here that seems to be a likely source. We saw coal tar as our most similar, and that's what we kept seeing. We're continuing this study with other rivers, even more rural, smaller communities, so that data is still in the hopper to analyze and see what we're going to see there as far as matches. I think the take home I would say is that we can identify a source here. None of our samples were extremely high. There were a couple samples that were high enough where you're approaching the probable effects level for certain PAHs, but there's not like toxic sludge. It's not at that point. You know, they're there though, and that's what we find is we can find PAHs pretty much anywhere we try to measure them because they come from so many different sources. And what we see is that the type of source is identifiable based on that profile. I just wanted to acknowledge, because it's great to have people to work with you, and Alyssa Valentine is a former student of mine who's now in a MD MPH program at Madison, and Tyson Cook and Paul Mathewson, both from Clean Wisconsin, really got the project together and figured out where we were going to sample, and collected samples and did some of the data analysis. One interesting thing about this we learned early on, I had done a study similar to this in South Carolina, and there we were able to go to stormwater ponds. And we initially thought we were going to go to stormwater ponds with this, but stormwater ponds are privately owned or municipally owned, where the rivers are not. And so if we had identified contamination in those, then the owner would have been required to clean it up. So that makes it harder to ask to get permission when you know that might happen. So that's what overview. I think I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions, anyone?
So in relation to the coal tar sealants, like what percentage of current sealants are coal tar based?
They're both available on the market. In the East, for whatever reason, it's more commonly found, the coal tar. But but I'm not sure about applicators, what they prefer, what they use. What little I have seen, it seems that there's some performance advantages probably for asphalt-based over coal tar, but they both exist.
Any cost between the two?
Not my area. I think a lot of the sealants, well, there are homeowners that do it, but I think a lot of it is the commercial properties, and I'm not sure how they price that out.
But the recommendation would be that they should use which kind if they're going to do it?
Well, so I work at the university. We are seeing the signature of coal tar in their sediments. The risk, I would say, long term of continuing to use coal tar is that it could reach the point where it either requires cleanup or it begins to affect wildlife. So it's certainly the highest contributor from what starting materials have in.
The last slide that had the something in the 70,000.
Yeah.
So we'd be much better off using the lower.
To minimize PAHs going into the environment, coal tar is much higher on that list.
Than asphalt.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
Okay. So if it were a choice for somebody who's doing their own driveway in Oshkosh, they should really try to find asphalt-based as opposed to coal tar-based.
It's less likely to pollute the environment.
Okay. And as far as the lifetime of that treatment, it's not going to be significantly different, probably?
I wouldn't know. Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't know.
Nice try, huh?
Well, I mean, I'm not an applicator of these materials. I don't sell them.
And you have a concrete driveway?
I do have a concrete driveway.
I thought so. I'm hoping for permeable pavement next time myself. But okay. What other takeaways should we have for that? What should we try to communicate to the community?
I think, PAHs aren't something that you can completely avoid. I think sometimes there's a perception that you can avoid everything that causes cancer somehow, and you can't, and this is just one of the things. But our bodies do some elimination of these. They're not like mercury or lead that tends to stay with you for your whole life. So it's just watching out for those sources where you might be exposed. But
You haven't, or no one has done any studies on our local waterways?
The only thing I'm aware of is there was PAH contamination underneath the leach, and they did remediation there. That was before I moved here. So, but I know there's a DNR fact sheet on the web somewhere about the PAH contamination at the leach, and that was a coal tar or coal gasification plant. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember that. I lived here then.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions, anyone? Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing this and
Thank you very much.
for basically putting chemistry into English. I appreciate that.
Excellent. It's always good when I can do that.
Yes, we appreciate it. Okay, you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting. Do not feel like you have to.
Thank you. I've got a child running in a track meet, so.
Ah, well, good luck to them. The next thing on our agenda then is Urban Nonpoint Source and Stormwater Management Planning Grant. And that was a letter that was put up on our site. Did you all have a chance to read it? And I did speak with somebody from one of the engineers from the Stormwater Department today. And basically, they're just asking us to provide support for this. It's a state grant, and it helps the city get it if they show more support internally. So if you've all read it, would you all be willing to just vote on this and say we should do it? So somebody should maybe give me a motion. We should.
I move to, I don't know, what am I moving to?
You're moving that we would like to submit.
Recommend give this letter. Okay, for the grant to the city.
Yeah, that'd be good. Okay, second? Second, anyone?
I'll second. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. That was easy. Urban beekeeping and chicken keeping ordinance. We have updates?
Really briefly. So basically, last time I think you all approved the revised ordinances for the bee and chicken keeping here in the city of Oshkosh. What I did was I made the change that I think was asked for at the last meeting, the text amendment to the draft, and then I submitted to other staff so that we can work on getting, our goal now is to get these onto a council agenda for consideration. I drafted a memo, a staff memo basically, that our other departments that have been involved just have to be okay with, and once they're on board, we can get it on a council agenda and hopefully get them to consider it. So that's kind of where we are. I've been trying to push it forward as much as I can, as quickly as I can, so.
And it'll get there eventually. Next on the agenda is the Environmental Leadership Award. I can do that update. I went to State of the City and sat there and got to see it being handed out. It was a beautiful little ceremony, and it went to Paul Fowler, as you probably know. He was a he's no longer with us, but he had been very interested in all kinds of sustainable agricultural practices and many other things for as long as I've been in Oshkosh. So I had met him when I first came to town, so that was quite a while ago. And so very well deserved. And now, of course, our goal with this is going to be to set the schedule so that we can get applications in a timely manner for the next State of the City, because our goal is to hand that out annually at the State of the City. So next up, Menominee Shoreland Restoration Update. I bet Michelle has some things to share.
I do. We had a leadership meeting for Friends of Menominee Park Shoreland, and we just set out some tentative goals and dates when we want to open up the season and everything like that. So we have some partners we want to reach out to in the community and see if we can have them adopt a cleanup and help us out with our restoration efforts this year. So all good things and very exciting. So if you haven't already, add us on Facebook, Friends of Menominee Park Shoreland, so that you can see all of the upcoming activities. We're just solidifying all of our dates for the summer right now and making those connections for fundraising and for getting everybody to join us for a cleanup.
The date of the cleanup was?
Oh, we're going to have lots of dates for cleanups, but we're going to be looking into getting the pump house opened up. It really depends on the weather, but I'm hoping on Saturday, April 13th, that we'll get the pump house site, make sure that the fencing is still in place, possibly put in some new seeds. We're looking to put in brown-eyed Susans. We got some seeds last fall, so we can put those in. And I'd like to do that after the crane count that is going on that day. So it'd be from 9 to 11. So the pump house site is right by the softball field in Menominee Park. You just park in the softball, and then you go north on the lake trail there, and you'll get to our site right across from the pump house. So it's pretty easy to get to.
So barring snowstorms, you'll be there on the 13th.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be at Bird Fest on Saturday, May 4th. So we'll have a table there, all lots of information and things like that. We're looking into being a part of Celebrate the Power of Community with United Way. We applied, so we'll see what happens. And we'll reach out to Target to see if they want to join us again for our opening of the Miller's Bay site and putting down cardboard and wood chips and all that fun stuff, which we've traditionally done this Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. So
if someone belongs to a group or organization and they'd like to offer a date to help out, how would they reach you?
The best way would probably be to reach out via Facebook, just send our group a message, and we can respond. We have lots of organizers now, so we've added lots of people to our administration crew on Facebook. You can also email me, but you know, if you can write down my email address, it might be a little harder, but you can always email me at Michelle, that's MICHELLE ELLE.Bogdan, BOGDEN @gmail.com.
Okay, and that would be Friends of Menominee Shoreland on Facebook?
Yep.
Menominee
Friends of
Park Shoreland.
Yep. Friends of Menominee Park Shoreland.
Park Shoreland, okay.
Yep. And then you'll be notified of all the fun stuff coming up.
Excellent. And I've been talking to some people who just want to find things to volunteer, so,
Yeah, that's great.
okay,
Yeah,
good.
and we commonly, like to reach out to Wild Ones and Audubon, so they'll probably have one. But any community group, we've worked with the Girl Scouts before. We've worked with just general people that like to do cleanups along the lake. We have so many different organizations that have joined us in the past. So if you're thinking about it,
If you're one of those people who likes to play in the dirt,
yeah,
join Michelle.
Always have a good
Okay.
time. It's good for your emotional health, mental health. Digging in the dirt.
It's a total wellness program, and it helps the shoreland, too.
That's right. And you can spot some butterflies and see wonderful flowers.
Well, speaking of wellness, the next thing on our agenda is we have been invited to join Oshkosh Corporation at their Sustainability and Wellness Expo on April 16th. This is a closed expo for the employees, which there are a lot of at that particular, our largest employer. But if any of you are available during the day that day, Stephen and I will be there, but it's on Tuesday, April 16th. It runs from 11 to 3:30. And just let us know. We do have to register attendees in advance because of some of the rules that surround the company. It's got something to do with federal contracts, I'm pretty sure.
And where is it?
This is going to be held on-site at one of the Oshkosh Corporation Global Technology Center.
Out on Waukah by the airport.
Thank you, yeah.
Out on Waukah by the
Okay,
airport.
okay.
Yeah. It's out by OEC, isn't it? Somewhere out there.
And there's signs?
Well, we'd have to register you if you want to come ahead of time, so then we can get you the map too.
Yeah, and they do typically have signs, yes.
Out for I suppose people come from several different locations for it too, don't they?
And all the exhibitors and,
Yeah.
try to get them in the
And
right
what will
place.
they do there?
We've had all kinds of different things in the past, master gardeners and the Fox Valley Extension Sustainability Team, and then also like solar energy, and Bergstrom's been there with electric cars, so.
Health
there's
food
usually
stores.
Yeah, 15 to 20 different booths usually.
It's pretty interesting. I
Sure.
attended maybe 5 years ago.
This is aimed at employees for things that they can use in their own life, is what it is?
And they have buses coming from the other places around town too, so that everyone doesn't have to drive.
Oh, okay.
That's sustainable. I like it. Okay, moving on. Oshkosh Farmers Market. We do have some dates to look at, which Stephen gave me a minute ago. Where'd I put them? They're right here. I've got them. We need to decide how many times we want to be there this summer and then pick our first choice of dates, which we may or may not get depending on what's available. But we have June, July, August, September, October. I would like to see us only there no more frequently than once a month. There's a limit of 5 times for the entire summer. I don't know if we want to be there as early as June. Sometimes it's a little brisk out, but that's fine for people who like that. If there are any dates that do not work for people in June, July, August, September, or October, and you would love to be helping out with the farmers market, maybe you can let us know. Or if there are days that you think would be especially good to be there. These are all Saturdays, and there are no Saturdays excluded during the summer market. So it's every single Saturday from June 1st through October 26th.
Oh.
So, and I know we don't have Robert here tonight, and he's usually our main farmer market guy, so
When do you need to know?
we need to submit this any time now.
Yeah, I
It's-
think it's definitely before the next meeting.
yeah.
Within the next week, I'd say.
You know,
Yeah.
should we talk to Robert and see if he has strong opinions one way or another.
I can do that. Sure, we can check with Robert and then,
And whatever he suggests, I'd be happy with. I don't have any strong opinions one way or another.
okay. Is there anyone else here who'd really like to be involved in this year? If you decide you would like to be, please let us know so that we can make sure and plan around your schedule too.
Yeah,
Okay.
personally, there's 2 Saturdays that work best for me. I helped last year as well.
What are the dates that work for you, Vic?
June 1st would be ideal, and
Okay.
then July 13th. If you want to just pass those along to Robert, see if they coordinate with him. It is
Yep.
more fun to have 2 people.
It is.
Oh, it definitely
Much better.
is.
And
Just-
when, if Robert gets his dates, you can let us know, right?
Yeah, we'll definitely announce what dates will be there at the next meeting. We just need to get the paperwork in.
People can always volunteer for dates after you pick them, right?
This
Oh,
is
yeah.
true, yes.
Yeah.
Nobody will be kept from helping out if they wish to.
It's fun, yeah.
Okay. Social media, is there any kind of a report on that? Anyone?
Just a little bit. So we've done water quality and really been focusing on water for the month of March. So essentially what I did was, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I plan out all of the posts for the entire month with the dates that I think they should be posted on, and then the topic, and then the entire post, including all images. And then I send it over to Steven, and then he's been kind enough to post them on the correct day with everything that I tell him to do. So that's how we've been doing it now.
Super. Way to
so-
do teamwork.
Thanks, we try. So tomorrow's my day off, so I will be taking care of that after I vote. Little plug there. Thanks. So we've just kind of been doing it month at a time. So it still works. Like, we're definitely still getting posts. People are still interacting, not quite as often. But that's just, I don't want to put like too many posts on you either, but we also don't need to be posting every day. I think once we get into the summer and, there are, shoreland restoration projects going on and there's more stuff happening in the, I don't know, outside, I think it'll be easier to do a little more posting, a little more sharing of other groups and stuff like that as well.
And ways that we can help promote this individually?
Just like, comment, share any of the posts that we create as the board. Just the more interactions that the post gets or the page gets as well, invite all of your friends to like it, the more people are going to see it. The more it's going to populate on their Facebook page, the more it's going to populate on your friends' Facebook pages as like sponsored or recommended posts. So just the more we as a board interact with it, the more it'll kind of be shared and it'll grow.
So I should go to our site and
And
then
just
I
like 'em
should
all.
like it? Like them all, of course.
Like 'em all.
I love them all.
You can do that too, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And share, yeah.
And then I
people
should
know.
share to my own page so that it'll have a broader base.
Correct, yep.
Spread more.
Yep, that would be ideal.
And invite all my friends to like it.
Correct, like I did.
Okay, good.
It works. So yeah, for the month of April, we were going to focus on like the benefits of rain barrels. You can guess who recommended that. And then in May, it'll be Menominee Park May. So we'll focus on shoreline restorations, Bird Fest, the zoo, things like that. Anything that happens in Menominee Park. So if you guys have any ideas about anything you'd like to see posted related to rain barrels or anything happening in or around Menominee Park, please let me know so that I can create some posts with graphics and all that kind of fun stuff and get that to Steven as soon as possible.
Okay, so should we send it to you or should we send it to Steven?
Send it to me because then I coordinate it all into one massive document and then I send that over to Steven. Then at least it has a specific date and all that kind of fun stuff too.
Well, and it makes it easier for Stephen just to post it without having to take so much of his time.
Correct.
Since-
Then he
since
gets
we
one
have-
document of it.
Since he
yeah.
has limited time to give to sustainability anyway.
Correct.
The ways we can help out as volunteers, right?
Yes.
Also, like Vic just mentioned, Birdfest is coming up. It's on May 4th in the park. So, yes, of course, you want to feature lots of fun stuff about that. And the plans for that are moving along briskly. You should see the yard signs going out very soon. Since tomorrow is election day, a lot of the other signs that are currently posted will be coming down across the city. And then we'll be putting out the Birdfest signs to help people remember that it's coming up. It's going to have, in addition to the big sit this year, there's going to be a lot of other functions, nothing in the zoo. It's all going to be over by the that shelter by the train and by the new bathroom area. So there'll be lots of fun stuff, including making your own birdhouse. If you want to do that, bring a child. It's for kids to do with their adult sponsors, you know. Somebody who keeps them from hammering their finger. Anyway, it'll be a good time. There's going to be bird banding, there's going to be talks, there's going to be all kinds of different raptors and things. Okay, moving on. Is there anything else going on this month that we forgot? I don't think so. How about agenda items for our future meeting? Do we want to keep reports on the Menominee Shoreland on here, Michelle? So that
Yes, please. I love that.
Okay.
And probably something about the Environmental Leadership Committee and what they're doing to advertise, because it's not too early to start looking for possible names.
You're right. We need to keep that in everybody's vision so that we keep that going. We can give a report on a couple of these other things that will have happened, and we'll have the dates for the farmers market by then, I would hope. Okay.
I think one thing, I am going to be meeting with Emily Springstro from Oshkosh Media and City Manager Roloff later this week about the social media stuff. So I'll probably have an update on that too. We're just going to discuss, I think, how we can move forward with social media and, you know, see if there's some potential solutions, some alternatives. So I'll let you all know next month about that.
To keep it as viable as possible without being burdensome, right?
Yep.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. What was the other thing I was just thinking? Oh, I was going to see if I could get a program for next month. Do you like having the short programs that kind of
Yeah.
help educate us about stuff? Okay. I haven't had a chance to talk to the group that I'm hoping can come in, so I don't want to say who they are yet because they might not be, but I'll see what I can do. I'll plan for one of those. Okay. I would accept a motion to adjourn to workshop session.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you.